Hey there, it's Laura Dominic. Thanks for joining me on a Plan for Joy podcast. Each week we'll be talking about things that will help you break the cycle of depletion. You know, the one that has you going from doing all the things to feeling overwhelmed, frustrated, resentment, anger, to sucking it up and starting all over again. And instead, learn to break the cycle and contribute from a place of abundance. Are you ready? Good. Let's go. Hello and welcome to a Plan for Joy podcast. I am very excited this week to be talking to Lindsay Murray, our neighbor from Ontario, Canada. I have been following Lindsay on Instagram for, I was trying to think how long. I don't even know how long. But I got super interested in what she was sharing when she redid her beautiful kitchen, which she happens to be sitting behind her. And so she has her Instagram account focusing a lot on homemaking. And that's what I wanted to have her on here for, to talk about that, because I've been so impressed with how she takes care of her home and the care and the joy you can tell she puts into it. And I did a podcast 2 episodes ago, so I think this is 13, that was 11, about how many women I meet who have such angst about their home, about overwhelm, about how to keep it neat and organized and clean, and how to keep up with all of the stuff that needs to be done, and how much stress that puts on them. Like, it's just very overwhelming for a lot of people. And so Lindsay and I today are going to be talking about that topic, and I hope you guys get a lot of good tidbits from this conversation. So Lindsay, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And why don't we start by just telling us a little bit about who you are and your background, things like that.
Sure. Thank you, Laura, for having me. You're doing great work on this podcast and everything you're doing for women. And I'm really honored to be here. So thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. So I first started talking about homemaking in 2015 when I started homeschooling. So I pulled my kids out of school, and our first year homeschooling was 2015. At that time, I had a baby, a toddler, and one going into grade 2 and one going into grade 4. So right in the thick of it, right?
Yep.
And at that time, Facebook was still the primary social media thing. Instagram hadn't really reached where it's at now. And I did a lot of before and after videos of cleaning the homeschool room. I had this beautiful homeschool room in our very small basement, and all of the homeschooling moms, you'll laugh about this, said to me, "You're not going to use that room." And I'm like, "Yes, I am." We designed this beautiful room. No, we didn't use the room. It was like 6 months later when we were at the kitchen table, but it was a playroom, right? You know what I'm talking about. So we were at the kitchen table, but anyways, that room was still a playroom. And so I would just happen to go on Facebook Lives at that time, and I would show the mess and I would show how I clean it up. And around that same time, I started blogging, and I had something called 4 Crowns Catholic Homeschooling, and started connecting with women around the world about this sort of thing. And I was adminning a Catholic mom group on Facebook. And then that went into like a homemaking group. And so, like what you were saying, I have spoken with probably hundreds and hundreds of women over the last 8 years about homemaking. And like what you've heard, they're also overwhelmed. And it's the same, very much the same story over and over again. And so I saw that because I have a natural joy and an inclination towards homemaking, I saw that there's a great opportunity there to help hopefully inspire other women while showing the reality of it, that it is hard work.
Right. No, I think you do a good job of showing people that things aren't perfect. You know, it's not like your house is perfect all the time.
Nope.
I appreciate that about your account, that you're willing to show what living with 4 children looks like, you know, and the craziness of it. And even now, you're not homeschooling now, right? Is that?
No. So they're all back. This is the second year that they're all in school, but I had kids home for 15 years.
Right.
straight
Okay.
without a break. Yeah.
Right. And that's, but even still, kids in school, there's just as much chaos that goes with that.
There's almost more. And I didn't understand. I thought I have these 6 glorious hours for the first time, right? In 15, 16 years. And that time goes by so quickly. And then even if all the work I did, they come in and it is all undone in that hour and a half. I'll text my husband pictures of the clean house. And I'm like, just so you know, it looked like this right before they all came home. Not that I have to be accountable, but it's just funny, right? So yeah,
Right.
I thought, oh, here we go. I'm finally going to live out my homemaking dreams. Somehow it doesn't necessarily work out that way with them all in school.
Right. And that's, like I said, it's so many times you look at somebody on Instagram or Facebook and you think everything is perfect. And so it's always good to show people that, no, it's not. This is reality. And this is how I deal with reality. So
that's right.
So what does a typical day look like for you? As far as like how do you keep your schedule and how do you organize that? Things like that.
So I'm terrible at routines, but I'm good at rhythms. And this is a very different thing for me. I've tried countless schedules, right? Planners, calendars, writing it. I'm not good at that. I'm very good. I think I've developed a good sense of self-knowledge of my rhythms, my energy levels, where I fall out in the month, right? And I work within that. So I'm very gentle with myself. On days where I absolutely can't get work done, I rest. But the days where I know I've got the energy, I push it to the absolute limit. So it's kind of hard to explain that to other people and how they can implement that without saying you really have to know yourself. And so that's one of the things. So to me, rhythms are different than routines, and a family that's busy and moving all the time and so many moving parts, settling into those rhythms, I think is key. But I do have a few things that I consistently do. So I open and close my house, and I worked at Pier 1 Imports for 11 and a half years. I was one of the managers. And one of the things we did there is you open and close a store. And there were routines we did every morning, wiping down counters, cleaning the bathrooms, just prepping. And I thought, why can't I do these things in my house? Like if you're just wiping down a bathroom counter quickly every morning, it doesn't have to be deep cleaned, like, when you're frantic after 2 weeks of not cleaning it. So I started kind of implementing this idea of opening and closing my home.
Okay.
And so that is something I definitely do, particularly the closing of my home. I have done this at night since we were married in 2004. And my husband's on board with this too. That helps, right? Because I know sometimes husbands and wives have different standards and different approaches to cleaning. Jason and I both realized early on that our mental health does much better when we have a peaceful adult space in the evening when the kids are in bed. And we will work to ensure we have that every night. That being said, too, a caveat is that, my husband's a police officer. And so for, the first 10 years of having kids, he was on patrol. So I was alone all the time. So I would still do that alone with babies and stuff. So I'm used to doing those evening things by myself. But that meant right from we had babies, toddlers, homeschooling, all of the children's things are picked up and put away. Period. And I like to keep toys together to maintain their value. I don't want pieces missing. So it's on hands and knees, going under couches, making sure everything was put back. Our first home was a townhouse where we had a combined living room, playroom. And so there was no escaping the kids' toys, but they were nicely organized on a shelf every single night. So we maintain that maybe 4 times a year. If we have people over till like 2 a.m, do we actually just leave the mess? But 99% of the time, even if it's 11 o'clock, midnight, we clean up the mess so that we come down in the morning to a clean house. I want to say that those are the things that as your kids are growing up, you wonder, is anybody noticing, right, that we're doing this work? My eldest, said to me 2 weeks ago, I love coming down to our clean kitchen every morning. Mom, I really appreciate that you and Dad do that. And I was like, you're getting it. Okay. So opening and closing the house, definite part of my routine. And in the morning, then it's making the beds, doing the laundry. Like I have set things. And I basically do 3 hours of maintenance every day. That's the reality, to keep a house mostly tidy. That's an hour in the morning, an hour when I see the kids in the afternoon, and an hour in the evening. And then I've
Okay.
always done something called the Friday clean. And this started when I was homeschooling. A homeschooling mom of 11 taught me this. She would only homeschool Monday through Thursday. Fridays, the whole family cleaned. Then she would take those 11 kids to the library. They'd all get their books, which is chaos to me. And then they would keep the house clean, right? Because they were so excited to read their books and look through everything when they got home. So I started doing that when I was homeschooling, keeping Friday as a cleaning day. And I still do that as my deep clean. And it's 8 to 10 hours. That's the reality to get. And I live in a 1,600 square foot house. It's not a big house.
Right.
But to get everything to the level that we enjoy and that I can maintain with those little like jobs throughout the week, it's an 8 to 10 hour Friday clean to set us up for the weekend.
Yeah. And there's so many good things that you said right there that I want to just kind of touch on. And that's, you've made the decision what's important for you. It's not what you're seeing other people do.
That's right.
It's what's important for you. So if you want that level of orderliness and cleanliness, you're willing to put in the time.
Yes.
To get it to that point. And so somebody else could be sitting here listening to this going, oh my gosh, I could never spend that much time. Well, that's okay.
Yeah. That's right. Yep.
You have to decide what it is that you want and what you're willing to put in to get it. And that's where the discipline comes in. So you don't have to be, I think, naturally inclined to this. Like I'm maybe not a natural organizer or whatever, but if you have the discipline because it's something that's important to you, then you're going to be able to pull it off. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm hearing you saying. And I think that's so important. So other people don't have to feel bad if they want a different level of orderliness or cleanliness or whatever feels good to them and their spouse and their family to function.
Yes. Yes.
Then that's what you put the time in to do. And I think, like you said, that self-awareness is so key to a lot of this. And the rhythm, I've been talking about that lately and thinking about it because we get more things done when we're in the right state of mind. So
yes.
mindset.
Yeah.
And so you implement that too. Unless it's something you absolutely have to do, you're not going to take on a big project unless you're in the right state of mind.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
I want to succeed. And so I'm going to set myself up to succeed that day. So I'm going to ask myself in the morning, what is my energy level today? What is the reality? What's going on in our family? I want to succeed in my duty that day. I do believe it is my duty. This is where I am. And I treat it like a job. I do try to put in like a 9 to 5. And then my evenings are like everyone else's evenings, whether you work outside the home or not. But I try to put in a working day. But I work within what I can do that day. And I never beat myself up if I can't get it done, ever. I just go, this is what I can do. I'm going to aim for it. I do set the bar up here, but I never feel bad when I don't hit that bar. But I'm not going to lower the bar because I do know what helps my family run smoothly. And like what you're talking about, like what works in everybody's families, I think that's an important discussion within families. And I do think that we should say, hey, what makes you feel better to your kids? How can you study better? Do you study better when your room is organized?
Right.
Right. And to your husband, I feel like for years, heaven forbid, as women, we actually ask our husbands if they would appreciate the house a little cleaner. Like that's so archaic. And so I really do believe having those conversations. And I think that a lot of husbands and wives would really enjoy their leisure and their rest time together in a room that is tidy. Again, not perfection, right?
Right.
Just peaceful, not with children's toys everywhere. I do find that is how Jason and I really can connect. We'll have a cocktail, we'll light some candles, and we rarely ever have to leave our house because we've created a space that we enjoy.
Right. Right. Exactly. And one thing I did early on, in our marriage was I needed to go to bed with most of the house cleaned up.
Yes.
Because the worst thing to me was waking up and seeing chaos and mess. And it just, talk about shooting your mindset right there. You just are like, ugh, I want to go back to bed. But then what I would do is get aggravated when nobody would help me. Yeah. It's like, okay, but they obviously didn't need that level of cleanliness when they went to bed. And so it would be like, okay, here's again, learning about boundaries, telling people, communicating what you need, asking for that. And so that's where the conversation becomes so important, that if it's important to you, but it's not important to the rest of your family, then you have a decision to make again. Is this something I'm willing to put in the time for? Or am I going to compromise somehow? Can we sit down and have a discussion? And it sounds like that's what you guys are good at too, is coming to those terms. What can we agree on, and the fact that your husband is on board, that's wonderful. But if he's not, then you're gonna have to compromise, because there's no point in you working and then getting aggravated at everybody because they don't help when you haven't worked out that or had that conversation, really. And I learned that. It took me a long time to learn that.
It took me a long time too. I actually have a catalyst moment for me about when I learned that. And that was, I think we had one baby or two, and I was rage sweeping our kitchen. It was like 11 o'clock at night. My husband was on the couch with a beer, and I was angrily sweeping. And I thought, does he not hear me in here banging things? Why is he not jumping up to help me? And this is when we were just kind of coming back into the church, and we can talk a little bit about that change in mindset about serving joyfully. But this is how it kind of started for me. So we were just starting to go to mass, and my husband had just converted, and I was just starting to learn about suffering and offering things up and, duty and vocation and all these things. And so I had this voice, it must've been the Holy Spirit, because I wouldn't have done this myself, that said, calm down and go offer him another beer. And I was like, what? No. He needs to be in here cleaning. And a voice was like, no, go do it. So I'm like, okay. So I went into the other room, and I had to practice with my nicest voice ever, because I did not have the nicest wife voice at that moment. And I said, oh, hey, honey. I said, would you like me to grab you another beer? And he went like, he shot up, and he goes, are you still cleaning the kitchen? And I'm like, yes. And he goes, oh my gosh, let me help you. And I went, no, it's fine. Let me grab you another beer. And I realized in that moment, he didn't know. He just honestly was exhausted. He wasn't deliberately in there going, I'm not going to clean while she's cleaning. And I just thought, okay. And then my pouring out of, kindness was reciprocated by kindness. And then I slowly started to chip away from this contest of who's doing more, who's tired, who's noticing the mess, who's not noticing the mess. That was the early years of our marriage, right? I worked, he worked. I worked when we had our first two kids. So I do remember being a working mom. And so that was that kind of tension, and that angrily picking up socks, that angrily going, you can't turn your t-shirt the right side out. I have to do that. Like that stuff breeds so much resentment. And I thought, I'm not going to do this and not have my heart be transformed. This is an excellent opportunity to not only, clean our house, but to grow in holiness myself. And so like what you said, if I'm going to choose to do it, right? If I'm going to think, okay, this is what we want. This is my job. I'm going to accept that this is my job, and I'm going to do it. I'm not going to do so angrily. I'm not going to put expectations on the rest of the family where we aren't, they're not maybe expecting at the same level that I am. That's in me. That's my decision. Right. And so I'm going to pray for them every time I pick up those socks. And is it easy? Nope. Do I forget? All the time. But I do try to refocus on that every time. That, it can seem so glib to just be like, every time you fold socks, think, I'm so glad we have little feet to put in those socks. You see these things, right? Every time you put away the dishes, so glad we have food in the cupboards and all these things. Yeah, that helps. But it really is about thinking, I do have an opportunity to pray for those people in my family. Every time I iron my husband's shirts, he wears a suit every day to work. He offers to iron them. I actually love ironing because you can put on a documentary on the laptop I just secretly sneak upstairs and watch something. But I do pray for him as I'm ironing, and I picture him at work in those shirts, and I picture him making the money so that I can be home and doing this. And I desire him then. I feel close to him when I think about him at work. Goodness, the gifts that are within these little chores, if we just transform that mindset and thinking, I'm going to choose to do this from a place of service, love, gratitude, and joy, because this is like the Virgin Mary. She cleaned her house. She didn't have a blog. She didn't have an Instagram account, right? She wasn't doing guest speaking. She swept her floors and did her dishes. Little jobs, big love. That's what I can do. Then I'm bringing Jesus into the home.
Right. No. And I love how this whole conversation isn't about technical skills. It's not about, okay, how to scrub your sink. No, it's about the mindset and the skills, the communication, like you said, the spiritual aspect of keeping your home neat and orderly, and the benefits that come from that. Right. So sometimes people think, well, I've never been taught how to clean a home. Okay, well, so there is some technical aspect to it, but that can be easily learned. It's more about having those conversations and getting yourself in the right spiritual mindset, positive mindset about what it is you're doing, you know. And, you get into crazy times, just super chaotic, and you lower your expectations and you cut the routine in half, do the bare minimum. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
That's life.
In the trenches.
Right.
Yep.
So then if that's your everyday life, then maybe other things need to change too. And so,
yes,
there's a lot there, but it's less about the technical stuff and more about who you are and who you're becoming as the mother, the wife in your home.
And I think something about the technical stuff and the skills, I think that because sometimes the way we view homemaking now as being something that women just fall back on because maybe, their job didn't work out, or they just have to be home, or they're on maternity leave, or any of these things. It's because we don't actually see how skilled the labor is. We really have dropped the ball on some of those details that our grandmothers knew about how to maintain their home. And so when women learn the skills, and you can learn via YouTube, trial and error, right? And then what I like to is I continue to level up in those. I do believe, I consider it my on-the-job training, where I learn a new skill and I try to do better and better at homemaking. I've been a wife for almost 20 years, and I've been able to continue to level up in my homemaking skills because I like that challenge. That's how my brain works. But the skills can be learned. And then I think once you start to practice them, learn them, put in that time, you go, this is a valuable skill set. What I'm bringing to this home is valuable. People pay hundreds of dollars to have people come into their home and do this work.
Right. Yep.
Right. And so I think when we start to understand that there's dignity in that labor as well, and that it takes great skill, you walk into a home that's really well maintained, that feels like a home, that isn't just a sterile, clean house. Right. But that a home that's been lovingly homemade, the skill level is undeniable in that woman, right? She turns around and puts a nice pie on the clean counter and does all these things. And you're like, hey, she knows what she's doing. Yeah. And that's awesome.
Right. No, definitely. And two, then that skills you can pass on to your kids.
Yes.
And that's something that I noticed, again, because my kids have always been at home with me. They've seen what I do, how I do it. I've taught them how to do it. But I noticed that a lot of kids who aren't home all the time because they're involved in all kinds of other activities, whatever those might be, don't even know what goes into keeping a home. And so then they're lacking that skill set,
Yes.
So that was, I think, an interesting thing to realize. That was like, wow, kids who aren't ever home of course they're not going to know how to take care of their laundry or cook their food or keep their kitchen clean or do all that stuff because they've never seen it done because they've not ever really been at home. So there's a lot to be said for passing on these types of things to your kids.
And sorry, I'll just say too, and if you do those things, you're passing on, but you're making it stressful, or you're not showing them that there is joy to be found in those tasks, then they're not, even if they're learning it, they're going to connect it with mom was mad. Mom hated doing this. Mom hated serving in the home. So they might not do them in their own home either. So you have to be really intentional too when we're teaching those things, when you have the right energy and you're in the right headspace that day, right? Because there's days where I just don't want to teach it and it's easier to do it on my own. But if there are days, I want them to see that it is a joy and that it is a pleasure and that I am incredibly fortunate to be in our little home that I love making for them, because it's passing on the skills, but it's really wrapping that around the joy and the pleasure of homemaking.
Right. No. So now you also have a podcast, the Modern Lady Podcast. And one of the topics that you and your co-host Michelle have talked about is, and I'm not even going to try to say it, but it's the Danish practice of
Hygge. Okay. Yes.
So if you wouldn't mind just kind of like giving a brief overview of what that is even, and how it plays, like how you came across it, how you embraced it, whatever, that kind of.
Yeah. So it's spelled, this is why, just so people know why we're confused. It's Hygge. And so it looked like Hygge, but it's
right.
And I might be corrected by someone, that's fine. But as far as I know, it's Hygge. Okay. I first came across it in a Canadian home magazine called Chatelaine a couple of years ago, about how to survive our dark Canadian winters. You're in the Midwest, you've got similar winters, except for this winter, as we were saying. And so I read this concept and it blew my mind. There's so few things I feel that we can really learn that we think I've never heard that before. Like, this is revolutionary, a paradigm shifter. And so that's what it was for me. Now, at that time, my husband was suffering from seasonal depression, some sad. And I'm the opposite. I'm great in the winter. I have summer seasonal affective. I'm weird. But I noticed he would really dip in his mood and his energy levels like November, December, January. And I read this and I thought, well, I can try to do this. Like if all I can do is keep a tidy home and light some candles and create an atmosphere of warmth and comfort, we'll see what it does. And it forever changed our family.
Wow.
It really did. And I would text him at work and I would say, Hygge tonight. And he would do like the heart eyes emoji. Yes, please. He would put with exclamation marks. And that got us excited to get the kids in bed, everything tidied up, candles lit, music on, creating that idea of warmth and comfort. That's what it is. And it's being intentional about that. It's not about now it's a business, and now everybody wants to sell you books on Hygge and candles and throws and all of the accoutrements. But you don't need any of that. It's just about making sure you have a space that is warm and something conducive to relaxing. And it is that mindset. And so when we started doing that, we had something to look forward to every night. And then that changed how I even go through summer. What it did for me is it unlocked this idea of, and there's no other word for this, but sensual, like using the senses within my homemaking, the flickering light of the candles, the music, the smells of a candle, or baked cinnamon buns, which is a very Scandinavian thing. Using those things that trigger all of our senses, it creates a sensual experience within the home. And I wanted to carry that beyond winter. I looked at, what does that feel like in the summer? What does that feel like in different seasons? So I'm very intentional about those things in our home. But yeah, Hygge, we did a couple episodes on that, and it really did inspire me to up the level of coziness. Now, this did inspire me to do something else too, is I realized to sink into the coziness, I have to have the cleanup done first, just for, again, myself. So I love this idea. I call it the clean up and the cozy down. We clean up and then we cozy down as a family, and we get really excited for that. So let's get everyone cleaning up and then we'll all cozy down, right? And do hygge.
And I've seen just some of the images you've shared and everything, and it does look very cozy, it's not that your house has to be perfect out of a magazine. I mean, you can do this in any environment that you live in that you feel comfortable in, correct?
Yes. Yes, that's right. Yep. It's, if you just picture that feeling of it being dark and blizzarding outside, and you look in someone's window and it's warm and glowy and there's friends all sitting around talking and a fireplace going. It's that feeling. And that feeling, isn't tied to things. It is just what you're intentionally creating within your home. And I don't know why we needed to be taught that as a concept. I love that these other cultures have these things as concepts. We haven't really done that, here in the West.
Right.
But that it's something that all of us yearn for. I remember hearing a long time ago about how we still present the notion of home to children in storybooks and movies. Mm-hmm. It's always that cozy home. We all long for it, whether we think in our progressive age we want it or not. It's still the fairy tale home. And so it's just trying to create that feeling. And again, I always wondered when my children were younger, if this was working, like if they really cared, and having them be old enough to give me feedback now, it is working. Last Friday, I did my Friday clean. I had all the candles lit when my husband came home. Everything was done. And my 4 kids migrated and all ended up in the living room together. And we spent 4 hours sitting in the living room as a family of 6, just hanging out, because it was clean and, warm and the candles going, and they love it. They love it. They didn't rush to leave the family time.
Right. No, that's just a beautiful effect of all the work that you're putting in, really, is to have that, because, I know that that feeling just when, and part of it too, like I have a space that I'm not happy about, like it's clean, but I don't like it. And so that you can feel that tension there because I don't like it. So then, it just, So again, working towards changing whatever you can change, whether that's physically changing things out, if you can do that, or just working with what you have to make it that environment that you feel comfortable in and everybody else will feel comfortable in, and then bringing that, just that's going to draw the kids in, instead of everybody sitting in their own spaces, even if we're all sitting in that same room together, on reading or looking at something else, right? So, no, that's again a wonderful concept. So why don't you, is there anything else that you want to add? I think this has been just an incredible conversation, again, about how much you, as the woman in the home, can have a positive impact. And it starts with your own mindset and your own ideas of how you want to bring this to fruition.
I think just mainly one of the things we talk about on our podcast all the time is that whether you work outside the home or not, whether you have children or not, whether it's your first apartment and you're 18 or you're an empty nester, if you live in a home, you're a homemaker. And that, what we do in the home sends out a ripple effect, whether it's your own children going back out into the community, whether it's company you're having in if you don't have children. What you leave those people with that sensation of home, they bring with them, and it does go back into the community. And so I think that we underestimate how valuable the homemaker is. and that so much of it is within our control. Like there's so much you can decide that you want to try to do that day, right? I control this home, what goes on in this home. My husband, I do believe, is the head of our house, but I am the heart of this home. And that is very, very important. I set the tone. And
Right.
it took me years to not be even resentful about that. Cause I'm like, oh, on top of not sleeping and being up with babies, now I'm the heart of the home. How can I set the tone? But then, and I am blessed with a wonderful husband. I remember him saying to me, yeah, but as a heart, we want you to feel good. So what do you need from us?
Right.
And
right.
These conversations don't just happen. We did go through, again, we've been together 23 years. So we had those early years. We have to figure that all out. But we did get to that place where I'm like, okay, if I am the heart, what do I need? Communicating those needs better and just understanding though, and doing these that I think we have forgotten. When women were house proud, they had little middle class starter homes that they just took care of. The doilies
Yes.
under things, right, to protect the tables. That this idea is a beautiful idea, and it's not tied to pride. It's just standing back, going, I did this. I took care of our home today, and I created this space, and seeing that that's value, that's a skilled labor, that it adds value, and that it 100% has a ripple effect in our communities.
Yeah, that ripple effect is something that I was talking about in a newsletter a couple of weeks ago, because that's powerful when you realize how much of an impact, one person can have, really. And that's how you change the culture. And that's what, that's what my message is all about too, is that, right, let's change the culture, right? Little things like this, like changing your mindset and learning the skills you need to learn, and learning how to, right, have those conversations and make those decisions and all of that kind of stuff. That's beautiful. Thank you for,
no problem,
for summing that up for us so well. So where can people find you online? What's going on?
Okay, so my podcast that I co-host with my friend Michelle is the Modern Lady Podcast, and we are in our 5th year. We have at least 15 episodes that are deep dives just into homemaking alone, different aspects of it. And then homemaking is woven through so many of our other topics, as you know. So the Modern Lady Podcast, it's available on all podcast apps. I am on Instagram at Lindsay Homemaker. And we're actually going to be in Wisconsin, Michelle and I, doing a retreat weekend in June of this year at the St. Anthony's Spirituality Center. And I think it's Marathon, Wisconsin. It is June 9th, 10th. It's on their website. And so, we'd love to meet people in person and be able to really connect with women and talk about these things in real life.
Yeah, no, that's always exciting when you can meet people in person. And I will link to all of that in the notes for this episode, so you'll be able to follow along and look into retreats. They're always worth your time. So
awesome.
I just want to thank you so much for joining us, and I'm excited to see how this will have a ripple effect in other women's lives. I think
wonderful
that you've been it was a good discussion. I like how these develop. It kind of took a turn that I wasn't necessarily planning on, which was perfect, much better. and I like all the things that we had the chance to talk about. So I appreciate the time you've spent with us. And again, everybody else, thanks for joining. Thanks for listening. Go ahead and, do all the usual like and share and follow and leave reviews. That would be fabulous. And then I will see you all again next week. God bless.